and Jimmy would tell a joke. It would take Brando 3 seconds to catch on, and he would go like that.
Robert Duvall finally talked about his greatest regret in life at the age of 94. Losing the one he really cared about. The legendary actor made a shocking confession about how he lost everything due to a terrible mistake, mind games worth millions of dollars, and a shocking betrayal. However, that isn't even the most absurd aspect. He's finally revealing the truth after 60 years of silence. The night she left for good. On January 5, 1931, Robert Duvall was born in San Diego, California. His family was deeply involved in the arts and the military. Mildred Virginia Hart, his mother, was an amateur actress. Duvall was descended from Confederate General Robert E. Lee on her side of the family. His acting career would later benefit from that historical connection when he played Lee in Gods and Generals. William Howard Duvall, his father, at the age of 39, he rose to the position of captain after an incredible career. Duvall was raised in a rigid but orderly home as the son of a senior officer. His family frequently relocated between Virginia, Rhode Island, and Maryland naval bases. He spent the majority of his early years in Annapolis, Maryland. Robert showed little interest in joining the Navy, despite his father's wishes for him to do so. He later acknowledged that he was awful at everything but acting and that he had trouble in school. He started while attending Maryland's Severn School. When he went to the Principia in St. Louis, Missouri, it became more intense. He chose to major in drama after high school and enrolled at Principia College in Illinois. He earned a degree in drama in 1953, but he had to wait to pursue acting. Duvall joined the U.S. Army that same year. From August 19, 1953, to August 20, 1954, he was in office. He was assigned to Camp Gordon, now Fort Eisenhower, in Georgia shortly after the Korean War. Duvall's time in the Army was uneventful, in contrast to his father, who had a distinguished career in the Navy. He joked about his lack of military skills after completing his service with the rank of Private First Class. He denied rumors about his service in interviews, stating once that even though his time in the Army was brief, it helped him discover his true purpose. He participated in a local theater production of Room Service in Augusta, Georgia, while he was assigned to Camp Gordon. That encounter strengthened his love for performing. Robert Duvall made a pivotal choice in 1955. In order to pursue acting studies at the local Playhouse School of the Theater, he relocated to New York City. The Sanford Meisner technique, which emphasized genuine emotions and organic performances, was taught at this school and was well known. James Caan, Gene Hackman, and Dustin Hoffman were among his classmates. They were all aspiring young actors who encouraged one another to get better. Despite the rigorous training, Duvall stood out for his commitment. He wasn't merely following the rules. He was discovering how to give each role genuine depth. New York was not an easy place to live. Due to financial constraints, Duvall took on any jobs he could. When he needed extra money, he drove trucks, worked as a clerk at Macy's during the holiday rush, and sorted mail at the Manhattan Post Office. Despite having nothing to do with acting, these jobs provided him with a valuable connection to regular people. This experience aided him later in his career in bringing realism to his roles in The Apostle and Tender Mercies. He lived in apartments with Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman during this time. All of them were having difficulties, alternating between sleeping on a fold-out couch and making ends meet in any way they could. Hackman was once voted the least likely to succeed by his peers, and Hoffman was a caretaker. They only had their talent and willpower, but they insisted on moving forward. The three of them would go on to win 5 Academy Awards and receive 19 nominations in subsequent years. The theater was Duvall's first real break. He had the opportunity to demonstrate his abilities in off-Broadway plays. He portrayed reclusive alcoholic Harvey Weems in The Midnight Caller. And playwright Horton Foote was drawn to his performance. In A View from the Bridge, he played the challenging role of Eddie Carbone, for which he won an Obie Award in 1965. In 1962, Robert Duvall starred in his first motion picture, To Kill a Mockingbird. He portrayed Boo Radley, a quiet and enigmatic character who remains hidden until the very end of the narrative. He left a lasting impression without uttering a single word. His performance demonstrated the range of what an actor could say. This was the first indication of the commitment that would characterize his work. Horton Foote, the screenwriter, thought Duvall was the ideal choice for Boo after seeing him perform live in The Midnight Caller. Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, accepted his recommendation for the part. In a straightforward but unambiguous expression of her approval, she even sent a telegram that said, "Hey, Boo." Duvall went to tremendous measures to get ready for the part. To get the pale, ghostly appearance of someone who had been isolated for years, he stayed out of the sun for 6 weeks. In order to fit Boo's description in the book, he also dyed his hair blonde. Despite the fact that he never spoke, these minor yet significant details gave his performance a sense of realism. Boo is introduced in the movie but isn't shown until the very end. Boo, who had been perceived as an odd and dangerous character, is revealed as a protector when Scout Finch eventually spots him and whispers. Scout and her brother are saved from danger by him. He turns into the protagonist of the tale at that point, the real Mockingbird, a representation of purity damaged by the outside world. Duvall only had one line in the movie at first. However, it was cut. His performance was only strengthened by that choice. He made an impression without using words. His movements and his gaze on Scout conveyed all the information that critics and viewers saw. He was noticeable even in a quiet role. One of the most iconic performances in movie history is Robert Duvall's portrayal of Tom Hagen in The Godfather and The Godfather Part II. Hagen served as more than just the Corleone family's attorney. He was their confidant and the man who used violent language to conduct business. Duvall played Hagen with a quiet strength that set him apart from the rest of the family. Despite being adopted by Vito Corleone as a child, he always felt alienated due to his German-Irish heritage. He was not motivated by emotion or a desire for power like Sonny or Michael were. He was composed, sensible, and forward-thinking. Duvall's performance was particularly noteworthy when The Godfather was released in 1972. Hagen was elevated from a supporting role by him. Whether it was managing negotiations or resolving issues, his influence was felt in every significant decision. His visit to Hollywood producer Jack Woltz early in the movie was one of his most memorable experiences. Hagen made an effort to reason with him by kindly requesting that Johnny Fontaine be included in a film. After waking up next to the severed head of his beloved horse, Woltz became frightened when the Corleones sent a more potent message. Hagen ensured that the threat was understood even though he did not deliver it himself. Hagen's role was further complicated by the release of The Godfather Part II in 1974. Michael had to flee the nation that had betrayed him after he survived an assassination attempt. Hagen took on the role of the acting Don during that period. It demonstrated how much the family trusted him. However, Hagen's power began to wane as Michael became more vicious. In ways Vito never did, Michael excluded him from important decisions. Duvall handled this change delicately. Though you could see the doubt in his eyes, Hagen never wavered in his loyalty. He never abandoned the family, even though he didn't always agree with Michael's decisions. He was nominated for a 1972 Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his performance. Even though he didn't win, his nomination demonstrated his influence. Duvall maintained control over Hagen, in contrast to Pacino or Brando, who portrayed characters that exploded with intensity. He didn't require ferocious outbursts or lengthy speeches. His ability to speak with poise and caution was what gave him power. He was one of the trilogy's most intriguing characters because of that contrast. When it was revealed, fans anticipated Duvall would make a comeback, but by 1990, Hollywood and the way studios compensated their actors had changed. $8 million was offered to Al Pacino for the movie. Despite playing a significant role in the first two films, Duvall received much less money. Although he didn't anticipate earning as much as Pacino, he refused to return after noticing the pay disparity. He subsequently stated that he would have agreed if Pacino had earned twice as much, but he left when it was 3 or 4 times more. The script had to be revised without Hagen. Hagen was written out of the story entirely rather than having a significant part. He had passed away off-screen, according to the movie. D.J. Harrison, portrayed by George Hamilton, was brought in as a new family lawyer to fill the void. However, it was different. Both reviewers and fans concurred that Hagen's absence created a gap in the narrative. Francis Ford Coppola acknowledged that the film's trajectory was altered by Duvall's departure. A power struggle within the Corleone family might have resulted from the original plan to concentrate on Michael and Hagen's relationship. Many people think the movie suffered as a result of having to go in a different direction. Duvall never separated himself from the first two films, even though he didn't go back. He revealed behind-the-scenes tales over the years, including some of Marlon Brando's peculiar routines. Rather, he employed cue cards that were concealed throughout the set. They were occasionally written on walls and occasionally positioned behind props. Duvall even had lines taped to his chest for Brando to read while he acted in one scene. Brando felt that his performance felt more organic when he was looking for words. Although some viewed it as indolence, the outcomes were undeniable. In addition to winning the Academy Award for Best Actor for his iconic portrayal of Don Vito Corleone, he famously declined to accept the honor. The Godfather was more than just another film to Duvall. It marked a sea change in his professional life. He had already established himself in films like MASH, 1970, and THX 1138, 1971, before he played Hagen. However, he became well-known thanks to The Godfather. Some of the most memorable roles in movie history have been portrayed by Robert Duvall. Although his roles seem fantastical, they are always based in reality. He portrayed Lieutenant Colonel Bill Kilgore in the 1979 film Apocalypse Now, a character who was both likable and terrifying. The film, which was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, offers a surreal perspective on the Vietnam War. Kilgore treats war like a game and is almost too fearless in combat. One of the most frequently cited lines in movie history is his well-known statement, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." It was listed as one of the best movie quotes by the American Film Institute. Kilgore is defined by that line. Disengaged from the pain around him, he views destruction as victory. Duvall drew inspiration for the character from actual military officers he had met. Duvall was in the Army from 1953 to 1954, and his father was a rear admiral in the Navy. He was aware of the mannerisms of soldiers. As if the war weren't going on, Kilgore's most bizarre moment occurs when he tells his men to surf during a bombing raid. Then there's the iconic helicopter attack scene, which is set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. It's a moment so dramatic that it's among the most well-known scenes in movies. Despite his brief on-screen time, Duvall's performance was remarkable. He helped establish Apocalypse Now as one of the best war movies ever made and took home a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. He portrayed a very different type of military man in The Great Santini that same year. In his role as Lieutenant Colin Wilbur Bull Meacham, he delivered a stirring and disturbing performance. A Marine pilot who was a hero in combat is the subject of the movie, which is based on Pat Conroy's book. In the House, he treats his kids like soldiers rather than members of his family, pushing them to the limit. Ben, his son, bears the brunt of his severe and combative parenting style. The scene where Meacham and Ben play basketball is one of the most illuminating. Rather than congratulating Ben on his victory, Meacham becomes antagonistic. Even losing to his own son is too much for him. Duvall ensured that Meacham was more than just a bad guy. Even though he wasn't sure how to put it, he discovered the little instances in which the character displayed love. His portrayal softened some of Meacham's harsher characteristics from the novel, according to critics, making him more nuanced. The movie looks at pride, masculinity, and the price of rigid discipline. Before he passes away, Meacham makes an effort to reconcile with his family, but it is too late. Duvall received a nomination for Best Actor at the Academy Awards for his performance. He gave one of his most poignant performances in Tender Mercies, 1983, a few years later. He brought quiet strength to the role of Max Sledge, a washed-up country singer struggling with alcoholism. Horton Foote wrote the screenplay and Bruce Beresford directed the movie, which centers on a man attempting to start over in a small Texas town. He gradually moves past his past when he falls in love with a young widow and her son. In order to prepare for the role, Duvall traveled more than 600 miles throughout Texas, studied country music culture, and listened to local accents. He gave the character more realism by performing all of Mac's songs himself. Mac's attempt to get back in touch with his estranged daughter is one of the most tragic scenes. He passes away in a car accident before they can actually mend their relationship. It serves as a painful reminder that opportunities for second chances are not always timely. The movie delicately addresses its themes of faith and redemption. According to Duvall, playing Mac Sledge was one of his most intimate roles. He portrayed the role with restraint, allowing brief emotional outbursts to convey the narrative. He received an Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance. Despite having a modest box office run, the movie was hailed for its emotional depth and realism, and it eventually became a classic. However, Duvall's role in The Apostle, 1997, was the most intimate. He starred in more than one movie. He was passionate about the project. He put all of his heart into the story, writing, directing, and producing it himself. He portrayed the inspirational yet profoundly flawed Pentecostal preacher Ulysses "Sonny" Dewey. Sonny baptizes himself as the apostle and starts over in rural Louisiana, establishing a new church, after committing manslaughter in a fit of wrath. In 1984, Duvall came up with the film's concept, but no studio was interested in supporting it. It was difficult to sell because of the religious overtones, and ultimately provided his own funding for the majority of the $5 million budget. Real churchgoers were used as extras during the 7-week filming in Louisiana to capture the spirit of a genuine Pentecostal gathering. Sonny is an intriguing figure. He is devoted to his faith, passionate and charming, but he also battles conceit and anger. During a church picnic, he converts a racist construction worker, one of the most impactful scenes in the movie. This instance demonstrates his talent as a preacher as well as his nuanced morality. Duvall ensured that the performance was authentic. He portrayed Sonny honestly, avoiding hyperbole. His efforts were successful. He received widespread critical acclaim and another Academy Award nomination for The Apostle. Additionally, it received the Grace Prize from Movie Guide for its truthful depiction of Christianity. The film resonated with viewers despite not being a box office success because of its honest portrayal of redemption. Preaching is one of America's great art forms, according to Duvall, who made that statement come to life on screen with Sonny. Like his career, Robert Duvall's personal life has been full of events. He has been married 4 times, with each marriage influencing a distinct phase of his life. Barbara Benjamin was the first woman he married. When he was filming To Kill a Mockingbird in the early 1960s, he met a former dancer on The Jackie Gleason Show. Barbara had 2 daughters from a previous relationship, Nancy and Susan, by the time they were married in 1964. As an actor, Duvall was still making a name for himself by accepting parts that would eventually catapult him to stardom in Hollywood. His career took off over the following 10 years thanks to films like The Godfather. However, fame frequently presents difficulties, and in 1975 they divorced. Duvall rarely discusses this time in his life, but it was a period of personal and professional development. Later, on September 18, 2019, Barbara died in New York City. In 1982, 7 years after the dissolution of his first marriage, Duvall wed actress Gail Youngs. She was from a famous family in Hollywood. Jim Young, Robin Young, and John Savage were among her siblings. In 1983, Gail co-starred with Duvall in Tender Mercies, which earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. Despite their strong professional bond, their marriage did not endure. They got divorced in 1986. Although Duvall had previously declared that he would never wed an actress, he made an exception for Gail. It's unclear if their shared occupation contributed to their breakup, but managing 2 acting careers can be challenging. Duvall wed professional dancer Sharon Brophy in 1991. Their love of dance, particularly Argentine tango, served as the foundation for their relationship. Sharon even taught him how to tango at one point. However, a deep bond over something so intimate was insufficient to sustain the marriage. They got divorced in 1996 after 5 years of dating. Since their split, Sharon has avoided the spotlight and maintained a low profile, in contrast to Duvall's former spouses. Duvall met Argentine actress and filmmaker Luciana Pedraza later that year. Their encounter was entirely coincidental. Unaware of his identity, Luciana invited him to a party. Even though they were 41 years apart in age, they clicked right away. Luciana was the oldest of 5 sisters and was born in Jujuy Province, Argentina, on January 5, 1972. Before entering the film industry, she obtained an MBA from the University of Buenos Aires. She and Duvall have collaborated on projects such as Assassination Tango, 2002, and Wild Horses, 2015, over the years. Their lives became centered around their mutual love of tango. In 2005, they were married. Since then, they have remained together. They have committed themselves to philanthropy in addition to dance and film. To help poor children and families in northern Argentina and other regions of the world, they established the Robert Duvall Children's Fund in 2001. One thing was the same in all 4 marriages. Duvall didn't have any kids. Rarely does he talk about it. He made a casual comment about shooting blanks in a 2007 interview, but he didn't elaborate. He has never apologized, whether this was intentional or not. Later roles in Robert Duvall's career demonstrated his ability to give any character nuance. In 1989, he gave one of his most cherished performances in Lonesome Dove. He portrayed retired Texas Ranger Augustus Gus McRae, who accompanied his partner Woodrow Call, played by Tommy Lee Jones, on a cattle drive to Montana. Based on Larry McMurtry's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, the CBS miniseries was a huge hit. During its initial run from February 5 to February 8, 1989, it attracted 26 million viewers and contributed to the resurgence of the Western genre. Gus became one of the most enduring characters on television thanks to Duvall's warmth and humor. He even compared the experience to filming The Godfather and later referred to it as his favorite role. In a shocking turn of events, Duvall lost to James Woods for Best Actor in a miniseries for My Name is Bill W., despite the fact that the series received 18 Emmy nominations and won 7. For the part, he did receive a Golden Globe. A strong emotional response was evoked by Gus's story, particularly his untimely but honorable passing. His famous quote, "It ain't about dying, Woodrow, it's about living," was one of his last words. Duvall was commended by critics for elevating Gus above the status of a traditional Western hero. He made the character incredibly human by striking a balance between toughness and vulnerability. Duvall assumed 2 challenging roles as historical figures in the early 1990s. He portrayed the Soviet tyrant in the 1992 HBO movie Stalin, which chronicled Stalin's ascent to power from 1917 until his passing in 1953. The film's realism is enhanced by the fact that it was shot in Russia shortly before the fall of the Soviet Union. Duvall got ready by talking to historians and watching archival video. Stalin, he said, was a street gangster who was always on edge. His portrayal of Stalin as a real person rather than merely a villain won him praise from critics. He won a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a television film or miniseries for his performance. Duvall, the man who had captured Eichmann in 1996, assumed a new, sinister persona. He portrayed Nazi war criminal Adolf Eichmann, who was in charge of organizing the Holocaust. The movie followed him as he was apprehended by Mossad agents in Argentina in 1960, questioned, and then deported to Israel for trial. Duvall gave a terrifying performance. He portrayed Eichmann as a bureaucrat who committed horrifying crimes with icy coldness rather than as a monster. He was nominated for another Emmy for his performance, and once again demonstrated his capacity to assume morally challenging roles. Duvall kept up his impressive performances into his later years. He portrayed Jerome Thatcher, a shrewd defense lawyer for companies charged with contaminating a town's water supply, in a civil case in 1998. He was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor because of the role. Instead of portraying Fokker as a villain, he made him a realistic man going about his duties. Felix Bush, a reclusive hermit in 1930s Tennessee who organizes his own funeral party while still alive, was the character he played in 1909. Reviewers praised Duvall's performance as one of his best, and the movie examined themes of guilt and redemption. He took home the Best Actor prize from the Hollywood Film Festival. He portrayed Joseph Palmer, a small-town judge accused of murder in 2014's The Judge, who has to make amends with his estranged son, played by Robert Downey Jr. The emotional center of the film was their relationship as father and son. Duvall's talent never diminished, and his performance earned him another Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor at the age of 84. Few actors could match Robert Duvall's career, which he built over 60 years. In 1983, he played a washed-up country singer looking for atonement in Tender Mercies, for which he received an Academy Award. Over the course of 5 decades, he received 6 Oscar nominations, demonstrating his versatility and consistency. His 2006 Western miniseries Broken Trail, which raised the bar for TV storytelling, earned him one of his 2 Primetime Emmy Awards. In addition, he received a BAFTA and 4 Golden Globes. Robert Duvall was just another struggling actor in New York City in the late 1950s. Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman lived with him in a small flat. Another thing that Duvall and Hackman had in common was their short fuse. It was Hackman's habit to start fights in bars. "I have to go to a pub and get into a fight," he said to Hoffman one evening, as if it were a regular occurrence. Never one to back down, Duvall occasionally joined them to avoid trouble before it became too serious. Actors, opera singers, and models from their acting classes were constantly swarming their flat. It was exciting but chaotic. Because of Duvall's crazy sense of humor, things were never predictable. Hoffman once told a story about how he and his girlfriend were taking a shower when he walked in. Rather than go, Duvall undressed, entered the shower, and introduced himself nonchalantly. He was the type of person who did that. Fearless, unvarnished, and constantly pushing the envelope. The three had a great deal of respect for each other's abilities despite all the madness. Duvall was later dubbed the new Brando by Hoffman, getting him ready to become one of the greatest actors ever. That was the highest honor anyone could receive in those days. All of them were molded by these years of hardship, but Duvall's fervor and resolve remained unwavering. He was 71 years old in 2003 and still refused to slow down. He insisted on performing his own stunts while filming Kevin Costner's western, Open Range. He fractured multiple ribs after falling off a horse during pre-production in Calgary, Canada. The majority of actors in his age range would have backed off or even left the project. Duvall declined. After recuperating at his Virginia home, he went back to work as soon as he could. His commitment astounded Costner. He went on to say that Duvall gave one of the best performances in Western film history in Open Range. Due in large part to Duvall's portrayal of Blue Bonnet boss Spearman, the film itself was a critical success. What many already knew was only confirmed by his injury. He would go to any lengths to give a performance a genuine feel. Duvall's passion for acting was equaled by his passion for history. While filming Gods and Generals in 2003, that relationship took an odd turn. His historic Virginia estate served as the backdrop for a few of the scenes. During his exploration of the area, Duvall found artifacts from the Civil War, such as cannonballs from previous conflicts. For him, the role of Confederate General Robert E. Lee in the movie was already significant. However, it became even more intimate when he discovered real war artifacts on his own land. His family was in the military. Rear Admiral was his father's title. Thus, this link to the past seemed almost predetermined. The way the Confederacy was portrayed in Gods and Generals caused controversy. However, it received a lot of praise for being historically accurate. The distinction between reality and film became hazy as Duvall's estate blended into that authenticity.